The first presentation is by Dina Feldman. Dina is a clinical psychologist and family therapist, an independent researcher and an activist dedicated to documenting and commemorating the history of Piotrków Trybunalski Jewry. Dina's talk is entitled From Polish Hassidim to Israeli Farmers in Photographs, Identity Transformation and Family Narrative.
Hello all. I dedicate my presentation to the memory of my sister Sarah, whose image as a child in Kfar Hedim you can see in the opening photo. She is here on the right of the frontal line. And to the memory of her mother, Dvora, both of blessed memory. Dvora is one of our heroes. Okay, family studies and genealogy try to inquire the family identity and narratives. One of the climax in this process is to discover photographs that can enlighten new perspective on the family's narrative by which the family identities are constructed. As clothes are an excellent medium to tell human stories, in my presentation I will focus on the contribution of clothes that appear in 6 of my family's photographs to describe the family narrative and its connection to family identity and its transformations. Next slide, please. This outdoor photograph from 1925 is of my father Abraham in the middle and his first wife Dvora on his right. She is pregnant with her only daughter, my half-sister Sarah, and an unknown third pioneer. It was the first time I could see an image of Dvora that her story was unknown to most of the family until about 10 years ago. But here you can see, most probably, one of the happiest moments of the couple, standing in a gleaming sun at the front of the cowshed of the new village, Kfar Hedim, the first religious village at the land of post-World War I Israel, that at that time was called Palestine and was under the British mandate. My father and his religious Zionist Hamizrahi members, who immigrated from Poland in the beginning of the 20th century as part of their Zionist ideology, established the village in 1924 at the historical beautiful Arbel Valley that overlooks on the Sea of Galilee. Much later, I have learned in archives and testimonies that Dvora arrived to Kfar Hedim in April 1924 after a bitter fight with her parents in Poland, insisting to join her husband 4 years after their marriage in March 1920, claiming that now her husband is the owner of a farm and can provide her home. It was tough because Dvora was the only child of her parents who from the beginning didn't like the idea of their daughter moving to no man's land. Look at the body language of the 2 men in the picture. They seem very proud in showing themselves as real Jewish Israeli farmers. Like in his childhood dream, my father finally owned a farm with many cows and starving land to plow and plant. Here he is dressed in a bright working dirty overall, Eastern European cap with a visor, and had a short modern beard. Dvora, a bit shy, is wearing white pregnancy dress with short sleeves, oriental kerchief, and a floral apron. And it seems that she is almost ready to milk the cows. You can see clearly her wedding ring, because of which she left behind her home in Piotrków Trybunalski in central Poland, in which both were born and grew up. There, Avram was the founder and the principal of the Mizrahi school, and she was a trader. I clearly remember the 19th birthday of my sister, in which first time I talk about her mother in the front of our extended family. I showed this picture and shared all the information I had found in archives about Dvora as a pioneer in Kfar Hedim during almost a decade, until 1933, in which the farm was abandoned because of various reasons. Dvora was one of these that stayed until the end of the settlement, although it was extremely challenging for her as to everybody else. In this festive birthday, I showed documents, but it seems that what had the greatest impact on the family members was this beautiful image that shows Dvora as a farmer and pioneer. Next slide, please. Just to understand the huge transformations that the couple went through, please look at these two photographs from Piotrków that, fortunately enough, were also found in my attics. On the left studio photograph, you can see Dvora at the age of 20, probably towards her engagement with my father. She is presented as a good Polish Jewish elegant maiden. Abram's photograph is from 1916 at the age of 19. He appears as a young Jewish religious scholar. Very different from the bright clothes which both were in the Israeli photographs. Here they dressed black traditional Polish Jewish Gur Hasidic clothes and hats of non-married youngsters, as both belonged to Polish Jewish Gur Hasidic families. And my father even studied in the Hasidic Gur Yeshiva in Gora Kalivara and then in Łódź. We know that many times studio photographs keep up appearance and tell more about the photographic norms of a specific society, community, the photograph company, or the photographer, rather than the photographed person. However, in retrospect, our case proves that we can't undermine the value of studio photography in reflecting people's identities and narrative, although the photographs are staged. The case of Dvora shows that her Polish studio clothes reflect better her destiny than the Israeli farmer's clothes. The transition points which Dan McAdams see as the most significant in developing self-identity and be integrated in narratives transferred her from one narrative to another. Her marriage cut her off from her Polish Jewish identity, and the fall of the pioneer dream caused her returning to it. We know that during the ghetto time in Piotrków, she had the chance to return to Israel, but she never did it. In mid-October 1942, she was still alive, but then probably was sent to her death in Treblinka with other 24,000 Jews from Piotrków. May God will avenge their blood. The Holocaust narrative of her has never been talked to this very day, as well as the abandonment narrative and others, which exist always behind the scene, but it is out of the scope of this short presentation to discuss. As to my father's Gur clothes, they might mislead the observer, as it does not reflect the conflictual attitude he had towards the Gur Hasidic court, mainly because at that time the Gur dynasty, which was the strongest Hasidic court in Poland, was anti-Zionist. My father, who was a Mizruchnik, religious Zionist, rebelled against it, and as a result, not only thrown away from the Gur Yeshiva and his family from the Gur Shtibel, but also his engagement to his predetermined Bashirt bride was cancelled. He was forced to marry Dvora with the condition to give a chance of a year in Poland to their marriage, which my father unwillingly agreed in order not to upset his parents, knowing for himself that he will never live his Zionist dream. From the correspondence between my grandfather and my father during the 20s, I learned how the fight between the Hasidic and Zionist narratives continued to be central issue in the family and in my father's heart. It became less conflictual soon after my father arrived to Kfar Chitim, when the Gur Admor started to visit Israel in order to prepare the ground for his Hasidim to immigrate. It was not an act of Zionism, but a way to prevent the economic catastrophe of his followers that could not immigrate to America, which at that time closed its door to Jews. However, it was a great victory of my father when his father admitted he was right. The land of Israel is a place for all Jews, including the Gur Hassidim. From my father's memoir, I learned that the climax of his victory was when he met the Gur Admor in Tiberias, a city nearby Kfar Hedim, in 1927, during a Hasidic tish, and dressed then the same pioneer clothes that you saw in the first image. Of course he was there, the only pioneer. And he never knew if he was allowed to participate because he had been a student in Gur Yeshiva or because he took care on building Puring House, the mikveh, in Kfar Hedim, information that probably was told to the Admor by the chief rabbi of Tiberias that knew my father very well. My father met the Admor again in 1936 when he worked as a religion officer. Next slide, please. On the left photo, probably, sorry, it's on the right photo. On the right photo, probably from the 1933, you can see my father dressed as a uniforms or religion officer of a ship. He served there until the break of World War II in 1939, during which, according to his Palestinian passport, he visited his hometown in Poland several times. Apparently, a surprising twist in the plot. What happened to all his ideas? To leave the land of Israel, which was, Apparently, a surprising twist in the plot. What happened to all his ideas? To leave the land of Israel, which was so dear to him? Well, in 1933, my father, with a broken heart that never had been repaired, left Kfar Hedim to live in Tel Aviv, and immediately after he got a job as a religious officer on the ship of the Jewish Agency of Israel, a Sochnut, which brought legal Jewish immigrants from Europe to Israel. The uniforms were of a religion officer, but also a cover to his underground activity in the service of the Haganah, the main paramilitary Jewish organization in mandatory Palestine. For them, he smuggled illegal Jewish immigrants and weapons and was very proud of it. On the left photo, you can see the Gur Admor with his Hasidic uniform on the ship on his way from Israel to Poland for his grandson's wedding. My father is a person on the right with the Israeli so-called military uniform. And so he tells about that meeting. My second meeting with the Rebbe was in 1936 on the Italian ship where I served as a religious officer. Under my supervision was a kosher kitchen. Hearing that I was once a student of the Gur Yeshiva, the Rebbe's wife trusted me and approached me to get some kosher products. During the Rebbe's visit in Poland, the Arabic riots of 1936 broke out in Israel, and his followers in Poland did not allow him to return. He remained there until 1940. His followers from America invited him to join them, but he declared, "I will not start a new exile," and was smuggled with his son to the land of Israel, in which he passed away in 1948. As a matter of fact, similar happened to my father, who from 1939 until his death in 1984 never left Israel. Probably part of this decision was connected to the Holocaust, in which he lost most of his family, as happened to my mother. Both felt that the Jew will be safe only on the land of Israel. Next slide, please. By right now, we are still in 1938, when my father met my mother, Nina, on one of his ships that brought her from Europe to Israel. Soon after, he divorced Dvora and married her in 1940. She adopted Sarah, and the two women became very close friends. In the photo, you can see my father dresses a suit and a tie and looks secular. But don't be fooled by the photo. Although he didn't wear always a hat or yarmulke and had no beard, he continued to be a religious man and observed Jewish halacha all his life. What seems to me very interesting in the photo is a pin, small pin on the left lapel of his suit. Until today, I'm not sure what the pin it is, which symbolizes his chosen identity. My guess is that the pin belonged to the Mizrahi activism. that actually along his life was a core stable identity, which due to the absence of typical Mizrahi clauses, could not be represented in his lifelong photos. Photos also cannot show non-visual elements like music. In our family tradition, we used to sing during the 3 meals of Shabbat hymns, Zmirot. All these hymns were sung by my father in gur melodies, which are sound as a Polish march. So probably every Shabbat, emotionally, my father returned to be the Polish Jewish gur boy of the second photo. Although he was very committed to his Israeli identity around which the family identity has been strongly constructed. But as far as I know, at least for myself and some other member of the family, the other non-Israeli narrative of both my father and mother also became part of the family identity, genetic, with a consciously and unconsciously continuous discourse between them. In conclusion, identity is a dynamic complex of stable and periodical, manifested and hidden narratives which continuously and dialogically are constructed during the life of a person and sometimes even before the birth by parents or after the death by descendants and followers. In order to understand the complex, photos and clauses in them, and even more collection of photos and clauses can be used effectively to tell a story, idea that was developed as a narrative photography. However, it needs much complementary information in order to achieve better and reliable understanding of what the photos mean and what an impact it has on people and the intergenerational heritage of identity and narrative in the nuclear and extended family. This process of constructing and understanding is not only intellectual and informative, but also can be very emotional and even therapeutic, as Michael White and David Epstein show in their narrative therapy method. And as Dan McAdams also found, this visual psychological journey can give to life meaning, purpose, and sense of unity. Thank you.